Hey Nipers, it's me, Wild Neptune. Today, I want to talk about some PvP stuff and my feelings about the current meta and the state of RTA in Etheria. If you like content like this and want to see more like it, hit that like, comment, and also subscribe button for me. Much appreciated. Alright, let's go. So I've been in Mythic now for actually a little over a week, and my win rate isn't the best, but I have a lot of games played, so I've been trying a lot of stuff out, and I've been playing a lot of playstyles. So all the three main ones, which are gonna be Cleave, Control, and Bruiser. I'm still mainly a turn 2 player, but I have been cleaving a lot more and also using a lot more control in my drafts and everything. So definitely trying to branch out and do a lot more. Like I said in my RTA video before, I do play all three styles, and that has remained relatively true. So I did want to talk about them, and at first I was going to go through them and like trace the weaknesses, what they're good at, what are problems overall, but I find that that really wasn't working for me, so instead I want to highlight some interactions between some of the key units of the playstyles. And the first one, though, will be a non-interaction, because these two units will rarely ever fight each other. And even though you think they would, they don't. Those are going to be Massiah and Tiamat. So, in my experience in this season, the three most common pre-ban units in the game are Plume, which I think is pretty self-explanatory why Plume is pre-banned, because she is probably the best unit overall in the game, Massiah, and Tiamat. So, Plume, again, self-explanatory. Massiah, why is he pre-banned a lot? Because he is by far the best damage dealing option for Cleave teams in the entire game. He is a full tier better, I would say, than Yelly, who I think is the second best option. Yeah, it's like, so we just ban him, then you pretty much neuter a lot of Cleave teams. Some Cleave teams, some like Cleavers, I say Cleavers, right? Like, so some people just have Cleave built as like a side thing. They only have Massiah built, and nobody else with damage dealer. So if you ban him, like, they're forced into like turn 2 or into control like Bruce. Tiamat is the best anti-cleave unit in the game. Not as much better, compared to Massiah over Yelly as she is versus, like, say, Red Rin or something like Viper, stuff like that. But the thing is that Red Rin and Viper, even though mitigation-wise they might be relatively almost to her standard, Tiamat actually does damage to the enemy team. So she works as both the anti-cleave, and also you can use her to like kill the enemy cleave team, which Red Rin and Viper cannot do in most circumstances. So there's that, and there's a reason why cleave teams will pre-ban her, because they just don't want to deal with her because she's the best option against them. And that's why these two units rarely ever fight each other, given a cleaver, like primary cleaver, and a bruiser type player. And I think this is, well, not really fun, because, I mean, it's one thing to have like telegraphs, right, where, hey, okay, yeah, this person's cleaving, he banned Tiamat, probably, but also it's just like a lack of like optionality, I would say. And so maybe to have like a unit that is like equal to Massiah, a unit that is like equal to Tiamat in what she does, and it sounds crazy to say that we need like equal units to like really really strong units overall, but I think we do. Like, maybe if they were like Massiah was a little bit worse or Tiamat was a little bit worse, at the same time, that would also be okay. But I do think that in this case, the lack of unit viability is hurting overall. I understand that the devs, they have said that they want to have a lot more units by the end of the year, right? Or whatever, like within a year. And I think that's a really, really good thing, right? I totally agree that that should happen. When I played Epic 7, early on, I had a very similar sentiment that some playstyles and some text, like stuff like that, didn't really have enough of a unit pool to really make them viable, because of, again, the pre-bans and stuff like that. And same thing here, though. But also, there's another problem with this. More units means needing more lattices. And when you have to start building a lot of like one-off tech type units that you use to fight like certain things, that really puts a strain on the limited amount of skill ups that we actually have. It's like Hoyan here. Hoyan is a relatively niche anti-cleave unit. I say that because she completely dies to Massiah, because Massiah just basically cancels her out because he ignores her passive skill. But when you can use her, you still have to have her skilled up, right? I know some people are coping. Oh, you just have no skill ups. No, like you still pretty much need, I believe, max S3, which is what I have at the very least. And this is for a unit that I might use once every like 30 fights, if that. And that's an investment that I just don't think is very good. Now, when I do draft her, she's either like post ban, which I guess is good because she means she protected one of my other units, or she wins me the fight, right? So, like, are those like, I don't know, like 10 extra wins, like not even 10, maybe like 7 extra wins worth that? Probably not. And that's an issue that I think it also has, that as you start to build more and more tech units for these two matchups, because your Tiamat and Massiah are constantly off the table, and you have to build like other things that are just quite not as good, just to make up for the loss of those two units. You really start to feel it. Next, I want to talk about control versus anti-control. So we just got a brand new anti-control type unit, which is going to be Mizuzumi Aya, who, in my previous video about her, I said that she was a pretty good unit, not the greatest, but still pretty good. I actually think that she's a little bit better than what I said in that video. Like, not that much better, but I do think that she is a very solid unit that you should probably be building up if you already have the rest of your core built. She is very strong in certain matchups, like against, say, Lilith. She is a monster. She basically totally cancels Lilith out overall. Anti-control versus control. When the nerf to Kazuyo, the Reverie, was seen about her sleeve, people were like, oh, control is dead. That has been greatly exaggerated. Control is still a very, very strong strategy, and that's because things like Silence and also especially Nahor have been buffed. Nahor in particular, for control teams, is actually very, very strong because he has a full strip with a freeze, and also, they AoE freeze and everything like that. And freeze is one of the, for a control team, freeze is the best debuff in the entire game. Why is that? Because freeze stops CR pushing. So that means Reaper Steps does not work against if you're frozen. And because of this, I would actually say that, and this is from like limited experience playing control or playing anti-control versus teams. I'll be honest with you, I don't really fight a ton of control players, and I don't use control myself that often. So this is definitely the playstyle I have the least experience with overall. But from my fights that I've had, I have found that even if I have a suite of anti-control units, like in some cases I've had Ling, Doki, and Aya, and something else for some reason gets taken out, maybe 2 to 3 of them, and against a full control team, sometimes it's like I almost lose, or like it's really, really close, where maybe if I lost like 150-50, it's over for me. This seems pretty ridiculous actually, because you would think that a team, right, of like anti-control type units with, still with a DPS and everything like that, and maybe like, okay, I think in most of those cases it is the Lilium that gets banned out in those cases there. So maybe have like another DPS or something like that, and like another like a healer, another support unit, something like that also. Um, but you would think that a composition that's designed just to counter, you know, the enemy composition would win like a lot of the times. But I don't. Again, this is anecdotal, but I don't think it does. It's like I would say if it wasn't for Reaper Steps, which again I said doesn't work against if you're frozen, but it can't be frozen all the time. If it wasn't for Reaper Steps, I actually think Control would actually win most of those matchups. And if it also wasn't for the Codex nerf, Control would have definitely won most of those matchups. And why is it, do I think, that Control just feels so much better than playing Anti-Control, which doesn't really work a lot of the times? Well, there are actually a couple of things. One is that ER sucks, especially in this game. So, if you don't know, your effect accuracy can only be reduced, like your hit chance, right, to land a debuff, can only be maximum reduced to half of its base level. So if you have a base 100% chance to land a debuff, the lowest that can ever go is 50%. And this is going to be based on your effect accuracy compared to your opponent's effect resistance. So you can never ever cancel out the the debuff chance of your opponent. And you see, well, why is this? Well, because they don't want it so that ER can just cancel out all the debuffs. Now, do I agree with this? I don't know. It's like, so in Epic 7, ER could do this. However, Epic 7 had Soul Burn, which was a mechanic where you can spend a resource to do something like ignore ER, which was very, very contentious because even in Epic 7, where ER could negate all debuffs, ER a lot of the times was considered to be a pretty meme stat. And this is from somebody who pioneered a lot of ER builds in the game. So there's that. The other thing too is that multi-hit abilities in this game. So in Epic 7, things would like on paper hit multiple times, but rarely would it actually have like multiple effects to land debuffs on those skills. And if it did, it was like never a crowd control, right? The crowd control would only be on like one of the hits. In this game though, like you have something like an oval. An oval has 3 attacks, and it lands, and each of them can have a stun chance, which I think is really, 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 really ridiculous. Or a plume, who has 3 hits, or Heinrich that has 3 hits. And that's the other thing. All of these skills, not only do they hit multiple times, but they all have multiple instances of debuffs. And you just kind of overload all of the cleansers. Like, what good is Aya if, first of all, even with like 300 plus ER, she's still gonna get, her whole team will have like 4, 5, 6 debuffs on her, before she even gets a turn sometime. And then she only has like a 1 in 6 chance to cleanse the actual stun off. It's like even a Doki with like say an Alicorn or Alicorn user, sometimes it's a 50-50 still. If you're actually gonna cleanse, at given times. This isn't always the case, obviously. Sometimes your chances are better, sometimes they're worse, right? But I'm just saying there are a lot of cases where even these like anti-CC teams, struggle against crowd control. Now, obviously, I would say, like, if it was pure crowd control versus pure anti-crowd control, I still think the anti-crowd control wins out those matches. But if it was, like, crowd control, and then you have, like, a damage anchor, right? Like, maybe they draft, like, Lilium and something else, then I actually think it's much closer than you would guess just based on the playstyles overall. Next up, I want to talk about the Bruisers and overall, and how tiresome it has gotten. So, one of the reasons why Bruisers are very strong is one, the damage in this game is just very high. Uh, Bruisers can just kill, and the enemy, and still be tanky, and it's really annoying. One of the reasons why Lillian right now isn't as good is because she just takes too much damage. Now, ironically, actually, there's been like a tide, right? So when she first was buffed and all the Bruisers were really tanky, stuff like that, Lilium just went to town because they were tanky, they couldn't really kill her fast enough as Lilium was killing them. Okay, then eventually the Bruisers, they started swapping out their like HP or defense percentage for more crit damage, right? And when that happened, even though Lillian would do more damage to them, it wasn't enough more damage to counteract the fact that Lillian herself is very squishy, even with Bloodbath, and she was just dying, okay? Now, however, as relatively more players have started adopting Cleave strategies and doing more damage, these Bruisers are actually having to swap it back to more like defensive build sometimes, and now the Lilium again is better, right? So there's that like interesting dynamic that's been going on, but in general, because of like the damage output, it's really hard to use these like tech damage dealers against the Bruiser teams, even if they are strong. Right now, of course, this isn't true in all cases, but in general, this is how I felt, that picks like Lilium in a lot of cases is relatively risky compared to just like drafting a second Bruiser, instead, right? Like, why in a lot of cases when I pick Lilium, if I have Rahu and then I can also pick Tiamat at the same time, and just let my opponent pick Lilium, and I kill her. Okay, like there's just that aspect going on. The other thing too is that why they're so strong is because all of the Bruisers are individually good units by themselves that can work in a lot of different strategies. And all of their supporting units are all also good units, baseline, that are good at every single strategy. This is one of the other reasons why Xiada has not really seen a lot of play. For actually both of them. One, before she gets her stacks, she's very squishy. She just dies. You use like an AoE S3, countered by Tiamat, countered by Holden. You're dead. Okay, well I don't do that, and very unfortunate. The other thing too though is that in order to use her, a lot of times you have to draft her with subpar units or units you want to use before. Like, okay, obviously I think that Doki is a very good unit to draft with her because she automatically gives her like a full stack of her buff here. Lane 2, pretty good unit to have with her. But you have to draft stuff like Nathaniel, who is a good overall unit, but like a lot more niche, something they're not going to really use a lot of cases. Some people even coping with stuff like Valerian, things like that. And when you have to think about drafting like Valerian in RTA, you're in a very bad spot. So, yeah, like, even the buff, some of these units here that were like changed and buffed like that, you really haven't seen them make a big impact. And that's just because of how strong the Stranglehold is that, Rahu, Tiamat, Holden have on the current meta. Not to mention that anything that relies on like getting buffs or having buffs overall and just stacking them up, it just like loses the plume in a lot of cases too. Hey, very quickly, I just want to say a couple of things I forgot about. So control overall, I don't think should be nerfed, like at least the unit pool. And this is because I understand that control is the weakest and least played strategy right now in the game. But the reason I think that is at the moment is because they don't really have a carry to win them the games. Yes, sometimes they just win to pure control and slowly kill the enemy team, and people hate that. and I think it's a very, very unfun thing to experience. But as soon as Control gets one of those units that can carry them and that fits their strategy, I think become a much more viable strategy and much more dangerous. In Epic 7, definitely Control was used in a very similar way it is right now at first. So, like, as a bridge for, like, Cleave Team, or, like, as a one-off counter to, like, a Mirror Mask stuff, something like that. But you really ever had a full Control team that was designed just to whittle you down slowly and make it so that you AFK for 10 minutes. Then units like Solitaria, that deal array came out, right, which really made Control a lot stronger and pure Control a much more viable strategy. Summertime Etheria also for Cleave Control, and this made it so that not only were those strategies a lot better, but at the same time too, there was legitimate counterplay to them, kind of. Of course, I mentioned these units because they're the most powerful ones I can remember during the time that really emphasized how strong Control could be. And even though some of the counterplays seem kind of like at times, so definitely like some of them kind of coping a little bit like that, there was counterplay units in the game that more or less directly negated kind of what they did. And this just isn't true right now. If a really strong Control carry came out at the moment, in my opinion, there are not a lot of really good options in this game that would counter it, right? It's like Aya only cleanses one debuff, and I think it's random. I don't actually know if it's random or if it's like the first one on the list. I never really paid attention to that. And also in a lot of those cases too, you really want Reaper Steps. And even though you would say, okay, well, the Reaper Steps and, you get Bulwark, Reaper Steps cannot get Bulwark. And probably for a good reason. I think if that would happen, then Reaper Steps is just too good of a shell. But it can't, so you're kind of forced to be maybe on a Halloween build, which is also viable, right? But in those cases, you're kind of fighting different things, and you're tuned for different strategies and stuff like that. So I do think that it is something that will have to be addressed, if anything, for like the sake of balancing overall. It's just other balances though. It's also really hard for me to say that Massiah or Tiamat, as much as I talk and complain about them, that they should be adjusted. Like Tiamat, yes, the best character against Cleave, but at the same time, like middle of the road in terms of Rahu, Tiamat, Holden. I think she's still very strong, but if anything, I would nerf Holden before I nerf Tiamat. And even though Matthias is really strong too, hard for me to say he should be nerfed either. I do think he is like maybe suspect, but that's really it. At the same time, I don't think Yellow should be buffed or anything like that. She's already really strong. Like I said before, I don't think that, like, nerfs happen. It has to be like mass nerfs and like very slightly, but that's not going to happen because that would mean too many resets have to be given out. At the same time though, I do think that nerfs have to happen for problematic units that are just way too strong. I know these games, they don't like nerfing because it hurts their bottom line overall, but if a game like this wants to have any integrity for their PvP RTA, nerfs have to happen. You cannot just consistently buff units and call things balanced, because yes, they are going to be balanced overall, but you just make a less and less fun dynamic for the overall game, because like you buff weaker units to be more in line with more powerful units. As units get more and more powerful, you start having more games that seem less and less interactive or decided like immediately overall, which it's like it's a problem, right? So like in Yu-Gi-Oh, this same thing kind of happened, right? Where again, Yu-Gi-Oh is a card game, but the power creep in Yu-Gi-Oh has become so great that you just have like non-games, and players they'll do whatever they want to do. Next player doesn't do anything, just scoops up, right? In Hearthstone, again, just like a lot of non-interaction because everything is just too strong. Um, and that's the path that I see a lot of gacha games, like especially like these ones, going in, where overall strategies just become too strong, and the devs are just too afraid to dial things back. So yeah, I don't know. I know this video has been a lot of me like ranting and complaining about RTA and overall, and if I'm honest with you, I don't think RTA at the moment is in a particularly fun spot. Mainly because a lot of it is like largely the same. Yes, we have a few new units to play around with if you have lattices to actually build them, but there really hasn't been like a shift at all in what's being good and what's bad. In fact, if anything, people drafts and their knowledge of the meta has made things a little bit worse because now they are just taking out the most problematic things for their strategies. Like last season, Massiah was not a common pre-ban. Tiamat was not the most common pre-ban. Like now it is, it's a plume because she's just busted, and you're just kind of forced to doing things and playing with things that maybe you just don't want to, and I don't find that really really fun to do. And so yeah, anyway, if you have any suggestions on what some fixes and changes they could do to just help alleviate some of the overall staleness in the playstyles right now, leave it in the comments down below. Anyway, my update to my free-to-play account will be coming out soon also, so get ready for that. Again, enjoy this video, like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. I'm Wild Neptune. It's been a good one. Till next time.